At dinner, my son's wife looked me in the eye and mocked me, saying, "You're useless now." I said nothing and left the table quietly. The next morning, I walked into the bank and paid off their entire mortgage. When the banker handed them the papers, her face turned pale. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. My name is Walter Hayes. I am 76 years old, a retired carpenter, and a widower. I built houses for most of my life, using my hands to provide for my family, and I always believed my work had value. After my wife passed away, I sold my small home and moved in with my son Daniel and his wife Monica. They said it would be easier for everyone, and I thought it might ease the loneliness of my old age. Daniel is 40 now, a hard-working man who spends long hours in an office job. He tries his best to keep peace at home. His wife, Monica, is 36. She is sharp, hard-working too, but often stressed by bills and the heavy weight of the mortgage. They have a daughter, Lily, my granddaughter, who is 10 years old. She is the light of my life, full of question, innocent, honest, that sometimes sharp words. Living in their house was never simple. I tried to help I could, fixing broken chairs in the garden, walking Lily to school, but I could feel Monica's eyes on me. She saw me not as an extra pair of hands, but as an extra burden. Small comments slipped out now and then, little remarks about the cost of food or the space in the house. I stayed quiet, not wanting to create but that evening at dinner, her words were not small. They were loud, sharp, and cruel. "You're useless now," she said, her fork clattering against the plate. Daniel lowered his head, too afraid to answer, and Lily looked at me with wide, confused eyes. I felt the sting, but I didn't argue. I stood up, pushed my chair in, and walked away from the table. In that silence, I realized something. Monica saw me as useless. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know that even in I still had a lesson to teach her, and it wouldn't be with that night after dinner in the small room they had given me, staring at the ceiling. The words rang in my ears. "You're useless now." For 76 years I had lived by my work. My hands had built furniture, fences, and memories. To be told I had no value was a wound deeper than any ache in my bones. I wanted to believe Monica spoke out of stress and not truth, but her tone left little room for doubt. The next morning, when I stepped into the kitchen, Monica barely looked at me. She busied herself with packing Lily's, speaking quickly and avoiding my eyes. Daniel sat at the table with his coffee, silent as usual, buried in his phone. Lily, however, looked up at me with concern. "Grandpa, why did you leave dinner early last night?" she asked softly. Her innocence cut through the awkward silence. Monica's jaw tightened. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, but no one answered her. Later, when Daniel drove Monica to the grocery store, Lily sat beside me on the porch swing. She fidgeted with her shoelaces before whispering, "Mom made you sad, didn't she?" I forced a small smile. "Sometimes people say things they don't mean, Lily." But she shook her head, her young eyes sharper than I expected. "She shouldn't have said that. You help me with homework. You fix my toys. You're not useless." My throat tightened. Out of the mouths of children, truth often speaks the loudest. Monica, however, carried her guilt in silence. That night in bed, she replayed her words over and over. She remembered the way I pushed back my chair without a word, the way Lily looked at her in confusion, and the emptiness that followed me down the hallway. Pride kept her from apologizing. She told herself, "He doesn't understand how much pressure I'm under." The mortgage, the bills, the fear of losing the house, they weighed on her constantly. But deep down, she knew she had crossed a line she couldn't take back. Daniel noticed too, though he chose to keep quiet. He had grown up in my home, living off my sacrifices, but now he sat caught between two worlds. At the dinner table, he glanced at me, but never defended me. He told himself that silence was peace, but in truth, his silence was another wound. The house grew heavier with each passing day. At meals, Monica's words were sharper, Daniel's silence deeper, and Lily's questions more insistent. "Why don't you talk to Grandpa, Mom?" she asked one evening. Monica snapped back, "Eat your food, Lily." But her face flushed red. Children have a way of holding mirrors up to us, and Monica didn't like the reflection she saw. For me, every corner of the house was filled with memories of sacrifice. I remembered working 3 jobs to make sure Daniel could attend college, remembered building the crib Lily once slept in with my own hands. Now I walked past Monica's glares and Daniel's silence, feeling like a stranger in a home that should have been mine too. I didn't complain. I fixed the leaky faucet, mowed the lawn, and stayed out of the way. But in the quiet of my room, I thought of my wife, long gone, and wondered what she would say if she saw me now. The breaking point came a few nights later. At dinner again, Monica spoke about the mortgage, the stress of paying bills, and how nothing ever seemed enough. She sighed loudly, looking at me as if I were part of the problem. "Some people just take and give nothing back," she muttered. Daniel lowered his eyes. Lily dropped her fork and whispered, "Mom, stop." The silence that followed was colder than winter air. That night, I stood by the window in my room, staring out at the dark street. I thought about leaving altogether, finding a small apartment to fade away quietly. But then I remembered Lily's words on the porch, "You're not useless." Maybe Monica could not see my worth, but I could show her. Not with arguments, not with anger, but with action. I still had something left to give, something that would silence her doubt forever. In her own room, Monica tossed and turned. The words she had spoken haunted her. She felt guilt pressing against her chest, but pride held her tongue. She told herself, "He's old. He won't understand. It's better to let things be." Yet deep down, fear gnawed at her. Fear that Lily was right, that she had pushed too far, that her cruelty might cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. The conflict was no longer just about words spoken at a dinner table. It had become a battle of respect, pride, and sacrifice. Monica's pride made her the victim of her own anger. Daniel's silence chained him in shame, and Lily's innocence carried the truth neither of them could admit. And I, Walter Hayes, sat in the middle of it all, quiet, patient, and waiting for the moment to act. The morning after that tense dinner, I rose earlier than usual. The house was still quiet, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the kitchen. I sat with a cup of coffee, staring at the steam rising, my mind heavy. Monica's words still echoed, "You're useless now." But in the silence of that dawn, I realized I didn't need to argue with her. I didn't need to shout, defend myself, or list the decades I had worked with my hands. If she couldn't see the truth, then I would show it to her in a way no one could deny. I had savings, money I had put away over the years, little by little, from jobs where my hands bled and my back ached. It wasn't flashy wealth, but it was steady. I had intended it for my final years, for emergencies, or perhaps to leave to Daniel and Lily after I was gone. But now I saw a greater use. That money could lift the burden Monica carried every day. It could silence her doubts about me and perhaps remind her what sacrifice truly looked like. After breakfast, I slipped out of the house quietly and walked to the bank. The young teller looked surprised when I handed over my account book and asked about paying off Daniel's mortgage. "Mr. Hayes, that's a significant amount," she said softly, her eyes widening. I nodded. "I know. It's time." She glanced at me, perhaps expecting hesitation, but I felt none. I signed the forms, withdrew the funds, and made the payment. As the ink dried on the paperwork, I felt a calmness wash over me. It wasn't pride, it was peace. I had done what a father should do. I had provided, even when no one believed I could. Meanwhile, back at the house, Monica was restless. She couldn't shake the image of me walking away from the table, silent and wounded. She told herself it was nothing, that I was too old to care about words, but the guilt gnawed at her. Every time Lily looked at her with disappointment, the guilt grew heavier. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. Monica sat at the table, her hands trembling as she flipped through envelopes. She felt trapped, crushed by numbers she couldn't change. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries. It all felt like a mountain pressing down on her shoulders. In her stress, she had lashed out at me, but now she wondered if she had broken something she couldn't repair. That evening, Daniel tried to ease her mind. "We'll get through it, Monica," he said quietly. But his voice lacked conviction. He was tired too. He saw the strain in his wife, the sadness in Lily, and the silence in me. For once, he wished he had defended me, but the words had stuck in his throat. Monica glanced toward my room. "He must think I'm cruel," she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. Silence, once again, spoke louder than words. The following days passed in uneasy quiet. I kept myself busy fixing things around the house, mending Lily's school bag and repairing a squeaky door. Monica avoided eye contact, her guilt making her sharper with her words to Daniel, shorter with her patience toward Lily. But every night, when she lay in bed, she replayed the moment she had called me useless. Each time, it stung sharper. Little did she know that while she wrestled with guilt, I had already acted. The mortgage, the very thing that weighed on her so heavily, was gone, paid in full. I kept my decision secret, waiting for the day the bank would deliver the papers. I didn't want thanks, nor did I want recognition. I simply wanted her to know the truth, that even when she dismissed me, I was still giving. That usefulness is not measured by what others think of you, but by what you choose to give. One afternoon, as Monica sat at the kitchen table with Lily, she sighed deeply, rubbing her temples. Lily looked up at her and asked, "Mom, why do you always look so sad?" Monica forced a smile, but her voice cracked. "Because everything feels too heavy, sweetheart." She didn't realize Lily had already understood more than she imagined. "Grandpa doesn't think you're heavy," Lily whispered. Monica froze, her heart twisting. She didn't know how to answer her daughter. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my wife. She would have told me I was doing the right thing. She always believed in quiet acts of love over loud arguments. And as I drifted to sleep, I felt her presence in the decision I had made. The turning point had already come. I had acted in silence, and soon Monica would face a truth she could not escape. She had called me useless. But the day the bank handed her the papers, she would learn that usefulness isn't spoken, it's proven. The morning the letter from the bank arrived, Monica was the first to notice it sitting on the kitchen counter. It was thicker than the usual bills, the bank's logo printed boldly across the envelope. She frowned, her stomach twisting. "Another notice," she muttered under her breath, bracing herself for bad news. She tore it open quickly, scanning the first lines, and then froze. Her hands trembled as she read the words again and again. "Your mortgage has been paid in full. Attached is the deed to your property." She blinked, confused, her breath shallow. Daniel looked up from his coffee, concerned. "What is it, Monica?" She handed him the letter with shaking fingers. He read it once, then again, his eyes widening. This can't be right," he whispered. "The mortgage is gone?" Monica pressed her hand to her mouth. "But how? We didn't pay it. We don't have that kind of money." Her voice cracked as panic mixed with disbelief. Daniel flipped through the papers until he found the line that explained everything. "Payment received in full by Walter Hayes." The kitchen fell silent. Daniel set the papers down slowly, his hands gripping the table as if it might steady him. Monica's face went pale, her eyes filling with tears. She whispered his name like a confession. "Walter." Before either of them could speak again, Lily skipped into the kitchen, her school bag bouncing on her back. She noticed the papers and asked curiously, "What's that?" Daniel swallowed hard, his voice soft. "It means Grandpa paid for our house." Lily's eyes lit up, and a smile spread across her face. "I knew it. Grandpa always helps us." She hugged Monica's waist tightly, but Monica's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, her hands covering her face as tears spilled freely. The memory of her words at dinner came rushing back. "You're useless now." And yet, the very man she had mocked had saved them all from years of struggle. Daniel stood slowly, his jaw tight. "I can't believe he did this," he said, his voice trembling. "I should have known he'd find a way." Monica shook her head, shame heavy in her chest. "And I called him useless. I treated him like he didn't matter." Her sobs grew louder, and Lily, confused, tugged at her arm. "Mom, don't cry. Grandpa wanted to help us." But Monica's pride, the wall she had built for years, was collapsing. For the first time, she saw the truth with painful clarity. She had judged Walter by what he no longer could do, instead of honoring all he had already done. That afternoon, Monica insisted they go to the care home where Walter often spent his days. She didn't even wait for Daniel to finish work. She dragged him and Lily into the car, the deed clutched tightly in her hands. The drive was quiet, except for her quiet sniffles and Daniel's heavy sighs. Lily leaned forward from the back seat and said softly, "He just wanted us to be happy." When they arrived, Monica rushed into the lounge where Walter sat quietly with a book. He looked up, surprised to see them all standing there, his kind eyes calm as always. Monica froze. In the doorway, tears streaming down her face, she held out the papers with shaking hands. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this after everything I said to you?" Walter closed the book gently, his weathered hands folding over it. He spoke with steady calm. "Because you're family, and family isn't about the harsh words spoken in anger. It's about love. It's about sacrifice. It's about doing what you can, even when no one sees it coming." Daniel stepped forward, his voice thick. "Dad, I should have defended you. I stayed silent, and that was wrong. You gave me everything growing up, and I let you be disrespected in your own home. I'm sorry." His eyes glistened, his shame plain to see. Monica fell to her knees in front of Walter's chair, clutching his hand. "I mocked you. I hurt you. And still, you gave us this. I don't deserve it." Walter looked at her with gentle eyes. "Monica, respect isn't earned by words. It's earned by actions. I didn't do this to prove you wrong. I did it because I wanted Daniel, you, and Lily to live free of this burden. I wanted you to see that even in old age, I still have something to give." Lily, who had been listening quietly, climbed onto Walter's lap and hugged him tightly. "I told Mom you weren't useless. You're the strongest one here." The room grew heavy with emotion. Monica sobbed into Walter's hand. Daniel bowed his head in gratitude. And I, Walter Hayes, sat surrounded by the family I had given everything for. For years, my worth had been measured by what I could build with my hands. Now, I realized my greatest legacy was not the money or the deed to the house, but the lesson I had left behind. True value is not in what others say about you, but in how you choose to love, even when love is not returned. That day, Monica's pride shattered, Daniel's silence broke, and Lily's innocent faith was proven right. The mortgage was gone, but what remained was far greater. The respect and love that had been missing for too long. The days after the bank's letter and our confrontation at the care home felt different. The air in the house, once heavy with tension and unspoken words, began to shift. Where silence once lingered, there were conversations. Where cold glances had cut deep, there were efforts, sometimes awkward, sometimes tender, to repair what had been broken. Monica carried the weight of her guilt like a shadow. Every time she saw me walking slowly down the hall or sitting quietly with Lily, her heart ached. The image of me leaving the dinner table in silence replayed in her mind. But instead of pride, she now felt determination. She began to cook extra portions and set a place for me without being asked. She lingered at the table to ask about my day, small gestures that carried more meaning than she realized. One evening, she sat across from me, her voice trembling. "Walter, I don't know how to thank you. Paying off the mortgage, it saved us. It saved me. I was drowning, and instead of letting me sink, you lifted us all up." I looked at her, my expression calm. "You don't need to thank me, Monica. What you need to do is remember. Remember that family isn't about what we get from each other. It's about what we give." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and for the first time since I moved in, she looked at me not as a burden, but as a father figure she had once ignored. Daniel, too, changed. His silence at the dinner table had haunted him, but after that day, he found his voice. He began to stand taller, to defend not just me, but the bond that tied us together. "Dad," he said one night as we sat in the living room, "I should have spoken up when Monica insulted you. I stayed quiet because I was afraid of making things worse, but in truth, my silence hurt you more. I won't make that mistake again." His words carried sincerity, and though I had forgiven him long before he asked, hearing them was a balm I hadn't known I needed. Lily was perhaps the happiest of all. She no longer asked why her mother looked sad, or why I walked away from the table. Instead, she clung to me with joy, telling anyone who would listen that her grandpa was the strongest man she knew. One afternoon, she brought home a school assignment where she had to write about her hero. She wrote, "My grandpa is my hero because he helps everyone, even when they don't see how much he gives." I kept that paper folded in my drawer, reading it when the house grew quiet and my chest felt heavy with years of memory. As for me, I found peace in ways I hadn't expected. I had been ready to fade quietly, to let my savings sit until the end, but giving it away, using it to free Daniel and Monica, gave me something money never could. It gave me dignity. It reminded me that usefulness isn't measured in strength or in how many hours you can work. It is measured in love, in sacrifice, in leaving the people you care about in a better place than they were before. Life in the house changed slowly but steadily. Dinner was no longer a battlefield of silence. Monica would ask me to share stories about the houses I built, the people I worked for, the days when Daniel was young. Daniel would smile at the memories, adding his own pieces, while Lily listened with wide eyes, eager to learn. Laughter began to fill the spaces where tension once lived. One evening, Monica stood and raised her glass at the table. "To Walter," she said, her voice firm but warm, "you've taught me more than I can put into words. You've shown me what real strength looks like. I will never forget it." My heart swelled, not because I wanted praise, but because I saw in her eyes something that had been missing all along: respect. In the end, it wasn't about the money, the mortgage, or even the insult. It was about the lesson. Pride can make us blind, silence can make us weak, but love, quiet, patient, enduring, has the power to break through both. My sacrifice wasn't just a payment at the bank. It was a reminder of what it means to be family. I knew my years were limited, but I no longer feared being forgotten. Monica had changed, Daniel had found his voice, and Lily had learned what legacy truly meant. That was enough for me. My usefulness was not gone. It had simply taken a new form. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from.